Welcome back to Tell Me More for Run Radio. My name's Trina Wilcox. My guest, Jack Brickhouse, could fit into several features of the Run Radio podcast, like the Writer's Room and the Artist Spotlight. But he will tell us a little bit about why he has such a great resume. Welcome. How are you?
I am doing glorious. How are you this morning?
I'm making it. I'm plugging along. I'm excited to talk about all the things that you have done and are doing. Um, how many years have you been an entrepreneur? When did you start?
So I actually started entrepreneurship probably 20, what has it been? Probably 25 years ago. I started
Oh
my
my
first
goodness.
business when I was 19. It was called AeroSense. It was an aromatherapy, small little kiosk in our local mall where we produce lotions and different fragrances. And so that was kind of the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey that, as we know, as entrepreneurs, the road can twist and turn, which it did for me, but that was the beginning.
Okay, so even that's a huge undertaking for a 19-year-old, I
Yes.
think. Um,
Yes.
so how are you? I mean, how did you figure out what to do? Who did you turn to for some guidance? Because there's a lot of questions that come along with it that people don't even think to start asking.
That's right. Absolutely. Even back then, just a lot of reading. I was fortunate enough to know some people who ran businesses back then. So I was kind of able to, just watch. But a lot of it was just reading. Trial and error was big at that time. But I understood, the core of business, just, the way that a business functions. There's a lot that I didn't know. But, once I felt that I had a good grasp. I just kind of jumped in and began moving products, improving the concept.
So how long did that last until you decided to pivot and try something else?
Yeah, so that was very short lived because that was my first business. I think we made it maybe just under a year. With that business, it was just learning. I think we hired employees too fast. It was just it was a lot that went on, but we were able to at least successfully launch it, prove that the business concept worked. We were able to lease a kiosk in the mall, so I say it was a success at that time.
So, okay, so were you doing anything else while you were doing that? Because that is like a lot of people I talk to still have other jobs they're doing to get their entrepreneur flames flying.
Yeah, yeah. At that time, that was the only thing that I was doing
Okay.
because it took up most of the day. Even prior to opening location, it took a lot of groundwork. Right, we had to go into the community and go into all the nooks and crannies, the salons, and all these different places to begin, bringing a product to the market that we wanted to serve. And then from that point, the our kiosk at the mall was open, had to be open like 12 hours, all right, from
Mm.
the time the mall opened to the time the mall closed. So at that time, no, that was the only thing going on. And subsequent ventures, yes, I've definitely done both as I was looking to scale my personal business.
Okay, so what happens after that? You decided that you're done with the mall venture. Then what
hmm
happens? What do you do
Yep. So
next?
I was able to attend Columbia College in Chicago for 1 year. I only finished 1 year. So I had kids early on. My daughter and my son are grown now, but I had them pretty early on. So I had to balance that and figure out how to generate revenue there, all while trying to attend school. I was actually attending Columbia College for entrepreneurship and music. So
Oh,
music is yes, that is one of my first loves. But I wanted to learn the business side of that, so that was the beginning of refining my business acumen a little bit more. So that was probably a year or so later, probably 6 months later from the time that we ended. I just realized the importance of receiving some more education.
so had you always been involved in music like growing up? Was that just something that was always a part of you?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. My love with music came from my grandfather when I was, 3, 4, in his basement when I would visit my grandparents' house. He had an old record player, and so he taught me early on how to play records. And he was listening to all these jazz and blues records. Again, I'm young at the time; I didn't know, but as I'm down there playing, these are the things that are being soaked into my DNA. Which I always say that's my foundation for where I am now with music. I mean, then also in high school, I was a part of the AV club, right? So I produced news shows for the local cable channel, and then I was also a DJ during lunch
Neat.
hour. Yeah, so I've been engaged, on that music side pretty heavily there.
Very cool. Okay, so you've decided to take classes. You're doing, my dad did the same thing, a class here and there, raising the family. That's a
Mhm.
lot of hard work. So at what point did things start changing and you started seeing business opportunities build?
So actually, what I did at college for a year, and then I went into transportation, truck
Okay.
driving. Yeah,
Hmm.
for some years to generate revenue for the family. In between that, though, I was still managing some musicians, locally, just some small stuff to kind of stay tied in. What I did learn from transportation was the logistics of how this country moves, which
Yeah.
in my subsequent endeavors, gave me a lot of insight on how to do certain things. And so I almost went into buying my own semi truck or and operating that way. Again, using that as an entrepreneur, a gateway to entrepreneurship. But that was not really a passion, and that was a lot of extra work. On top of
Yeah.
actually driving the truck, and then all of the things that go on behind the scenes of that. So I said, this may not be my endeavor. Let me just continue to learn and prepare for whatever the next big business is going to be, which turned into a production company some years later.
Nice. And you've got public speaking splashed in there too. How did that
Yeah.
come about?
Oh, absolutely. So in 2017, I actually founded my first nonprofit, Brickhouse Cares. We are
Yeah.
501(c)(3) based on education. But several years prior to that, I really decided that, hey, I want community work is my passion, helping other people reach their goals or become authors or produce music or whatever business it is that they want to do. There's a lot of individuals that are where I was when I was 20 years old. So I grew up in Gary, Indiana, just outside of Chicago.
Okay.
Although Chicago is the next big city, in my little hometown, resources were pretty limited as far as
Yes.
reach. So I would just venture across that border to learn some of the things that I needed to learn.
How did you have that drive? Because when you are in a smaller town, kind of like where I am, it is limiting and it is sometimes hard to dream. So what
Mm-hmm.
kind of what who inspired you?
Yeah, so I had a lot of different inspirations just through just watching the music business and some of my favorite artists who, at the time when I was coming up, it really became more about the business. And so the artists were talking about, this is how I went and started this company, and this is how branding works, and this is how these things work. Again, I also have always been a avid reader, so I would just read books. I was reading, even way back then, I was reading like Trump, The Art of the Deal, and just all of these different, business books. Just learning. Again, I only could absorb so much at a younger age, but I was still there doing that. And most, I think the most influential motivator was just my environment. I didn't want to continue in that environment. So for you guys that don't know, Gary, Indiana is most known for Michael Jackson. That was the hometown of Michael Jackson's family. Steel mill. We're a huge part of steel manufacturing in that area. And then we were also, unfortunately, the murder capital of the world at some point in time. So, not participating in that environment, but then also being able to, go out and journey and learn these things, but then be able to be one of the individuals that turns back to say, hey, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. And this is how more so that you can either leave this environment or you can help change your environment if you're going to stay in the community. So it was just that of I have to excel so that I can be the bridge for others in the future.
So what consumes most of your days right now? What's a day look like for you and what are you doing? Who are your clients?
Yes,
Who's your audience?
absolutely. So I have a couple different projects now. So my main work is with a company or an organization, Royalty Ministries Community Foundation. I am the chairman of the board there. I have known the leader, the lead pastor there for probably 6 or 7 years. I was doing some work when he was doing more, virtual and street level pastoring. And so he reached out about a year and a half ago and said, "Hey, man, I want to take this to the next level and become a nonprofit and really run put this business thing together for the ministry. But I don't know how to run business. I don't know anything about business. I'm great being a pastor and all these other things." So he asked me if I would come and help to build out the organization and then come to be a part of the chairman of the board, to be the chairman of the board to help put all that stuff together. And so then what that looks like is I've been able to bring a variety of international partnerships to the ministry. So we're working to take a lot of our mental health awareness events and workshops and information that we have here, and spread that overseas. So we're currently in Sierra Leone, Haiti, Ghana. We just had a gentleman reach out from South India, and so we're just working to build those relationships there. So inside of the ministry, I do a lot of coaching for the members who want to start businesses. I had a workshop that usually runs about 8 weeks at a time, where I offer all of this business information. And then for my nonprofit, again, I focus on education. So helping educate the community, whether that be mentorship in the classroom. Later on this evening, I have a gentleman who's looking to start a security firm. So I have to consult him and help him get that business off the ground. There's a lot of twists and turns. I'm recording podcasts. Again, I released a book last year. I have music. I'm all over the place.
Everything.
But it's just all about organization. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so my last book last year is called Blind Drift, something like a screenplay. That was actually a fiction book. So the first book that I actually co-wrote was called Cigarettes and Bad Decisions, and that was more of a self-help nonfiction book. And so as you see, just kind of the way I operate, I didn't want to be boxed in as a nonfiction writer. So I took on the project. I said, all right, I want to write something fiction, but I'm not a big fiction reader. I just wanted to, separate myself as a writer and be able to write on both ends of the spectrum. So The Blind Drift actually took me about almost 7 years to complete.
Really?
I actually started writing that before the first book that we released. And what wound up happening, first I was going to write it as a screenplay. And then I said, oh no, I want to put it more in book form. So there was a lot of format changes, throughout those several years to figure out what the end product was going to be. And then probably about two years before the release date, everything finally started to really take shape. And I understood, all right, this is the format. And so the way it is written is kind of the combination of what would be a standard fictional, adult storybook, and then also play. And so you can kind of, as you're reading, it's like reading a screenplay, because the characters are identified and you can kind of see the action move forward there. And with this second book, I also created a soundtrack to accompany that. So I compose music outside of just the soundtrack for commercials, TV, film, those sorts of things. And so I put together a 26 track music composition. There's no lyrics. It's just all music. So there's music from a variety of genres, from like pop music to world music to hip hop, all of these different genres. But it was created more to be an ambiance for those people who may be reading the book or just looking for like that coffee house type music.
Yeah. I love that. So your writing process, what was it like? Did you just were you a bit by bit writer, or did you commit hours at a time?
Yeah, so I always just kind of work off of inspiration.
Okay.
Some days I can sit down and say, all right, I want to write or I want to create, and it flows. But other days it's not that way. And so whenever I found time, when everything just kind of lined up, I would sit down and I would write. And so in the beginning, I wrote, it was only one book. What wound up happening was I turned it into one book with 4 different acts. All right. So eventually, in the beginning, there was supposed to be 4 separate books. But as I was kind of writing, I said, well, I think this would be much better if this was just one novel. Right. And so now it's a 400 and some odd page novel with 4 different acts throughout the book. And so I actually had written the first act was just going to be the entire book, but then I wanted to expound upon the characters. And so then it just turns into a series of spinoffs. So the actual writing process was I usually just write and get out what I'm saying. I don't worry about grammar or any of that stuff in the beginning. It's just about writing and focusing on where is this going. And so I kind of let the storyline lead the story. So as I create, I'll write and then I'll sit back and reflect and say, all right, well, where is this going? And so, I treat it like a road trip. Right. I may start off in New York, but the goal is to get to Los Angeles or whatever it may be. So I'm going to cross the Rockies and the Appalachians and all of these other places to get to the end product of what it turned into.
Neat. What about publishing? How did you decide what route you were going to go, and what route did you go?
Yeah, publishing. I was able to run that through my publishing company.
Cool.
Both times we use Amazon as our distributor to kind of get out into the marketplace. And then I also had, and this is key, I had a mentor in writing. So my editor for both books, shout out to Genoa White. She actually had written a book about autism because she has an autistic son. And she was also a part of one of the, or I think a couple of versions of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series.
Okay,
And
neat.
so she had that experience on how to actually do all of the background work. So she kind of guided me through that first time. And then on the second time around, she still was my editor, but I knew a little bit more about the actual layouts and formats of those things. So I like to be very hands-on with projects like this. And also when I'm writing, ghostwriting for others. So I love to write.
Cool. What's next for you?
More books. Actually, later this month, I'll be traveling. I was able to trace my ancestry back to Sierra Leone. And so I'll be traveling there to get my citizenship and build some more bridges and talk with the local. I'll get to meet the president while I'm there and local government officials. And so I want to, the same things that I'm able to do from my home here, I want to be able to help my country back in Sierra Leone. So focusing on that, I'm able to do a lot of that through my work at the ministry. That's really been a huge door opener. And so I'm just utilizing that now. The universe, the Most High, is guiding me in this direction to help these people. So it's just all about helping wherever. I'm like Superman. Wherever the greatest need is at the time, I'll be there to assist.
That's great. I hope you'll come back when you have either another book or another project and tell us about it. Would we
Absolutely.
know any of the commercials that you've produced music for?
Most of my stuff is overseas. It's
Overseas? Okay.
international. Yeah. Every now and then something US based. A lot of it also is social media now.
Okay.
So when people do stories and post and promoting their
Yeah.
business, they'll use my music there. So like, I think last time I checked on TikTok, I have like 8.5 million streams of people utilizing music to their different posts, right? So I have a
Neat.
TikTok plaque coming very soon. I'm looking forward to putting that on my mantle.
So wait a minute. So next time I do a TikTok, should I just search your name for the music that I want under my, I'm
Yep.
doing
Just
it. So
just search
that is
Mr. Jack Brickhouse, all one word. It'll be there, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you whichever platform you utilize.
I love it. Awesome. Great way we can support you. Awesome. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to share?
No, so for anybody looking to write or compose or do anything of any significance, just stay with it. Help is on the way. That's our slogan at the ministry. Help is always on the way. You just have to put some intention to it. Writing the book, the fiction book, was one of the most tedious things I've ever done, as far as all the changes. But I stuck with it, and I got a product that people really enjoy. If you'd like to check me out, just Google Mr. Jack Brickhouse. You can find me on Linktree. All my websites are there as well.
We will be doing that. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trina.